We're here in Florida to visit the home of Bob Ross and visit his final resting place. And guess what? You're coming too. So Bob Ross was born on October 29th, 1942 in Daytona Beach, Florida. His dad was a carpenter, and really for the most part, Bob didn't really go to school. Like he was out of school more than in school. And a lot of times he was helping his dad work. And in the 9th grade, he actually dropped out. So he left here at 18. He enrolled in the Air Force and spent most of that time in Alaska as a drill sergeant. And that's where he actually started painting because he was so tired of like yelling. He hated it. He hated yelling at them, and so he would like paint to kind of, you know, let off that steam basically. And he promised if he ever got out, he would never yell again. So what you're looking at now is the home that Bob Ross built and lived until he passed away. Now I think actually this white part right here was a green color, and it had green shutters whenever Bob lived here. So we're currently driving through the neighborhood that Bob Ross lived in. Now once he hit success and started earning money from, you know, the PBS show, he actually bought himself a Corvette.
Nice.
And he said, you know, like I said, that was a joy in his life, was to cruise around the neighborhood in the Corvette. So, you know, I'm picturing Bob cruising around these streets, windows down, hair blowing through his fro with a happy little smile on his face. That's life goals, people. All right, coming up this way, we actually stopped and talked to one of the older gentlemen in the neighborhood, and he said that somebody in the neighborhood actually had a photo of Bob Ross standing in the middle of the road in a canoe, acting like he was paddling it, just being silly in the hood, in the neighborhood. He also told us that the person that currently owns this house is a painter himself, and he said the house was kind of in a wreck whenever he purchased it, being held up in a lot of bank issues.
Yeah.
And that he's trying to get it back up to what it used to be. So this white that you see is just a coat of primer right now. And eventually he'll get it back to where it needs to be. So Bob studied painting under William Alexander, you know, outside of his painting while he was in the service. So basically he taught him the technique of rapidly applying layers of oil paint over each other without waiting for it to dry, in which this technique was something that Bob perfected, so much so that he could get a painting done in 30 minutes, thus perfect for a TV show. So the neighbor also told us that Bob used to have an art studio that came off the back of the house over here that was perfect for letting in natural light. So he would come out here and paint. But unfortunately, that art studio is no longer here. It just couldn't withstand time. Just think, if you were painting this on a canvas and you make a mistake, you could just paint a happy little tree.
Right there.
Right there. And make it perfect.
Let's decide. Maybe there's a happy tree, evergreen tree. He lives right there. Start with just touching the canvas. Use just the corner of the brush, just the corner, and begin pushing, making the bristles bend slightly downward.
According to people that were close to Bob Ross, he would often say that he always knew he would die young. Now, most of his adult life, he was a smoker, and by the time he was in his 40s, he had suffered from 2 heart attacks, and he had survived his first battle of cancer. Now, when he got diagnosed with the second one, it was a very aggressive type that was called lymphoma. And that's ultimately what would take Bob Ross's life. Now, during that last season of The Joy of Painting, the 31st season, if viewers would have noticed, Bob was starting to take on more of that health dwindling look from the cancer.
Yeah, he wasn't up and towering like he used to be.
Now, the bad thing about the cancer is it ultimately took two things that Bob Ross was known for. You know what I'm talking about.
His fro.
The fro.
He had a good fro.
It's perfect.
Really good fro.
And the sweet voice. You know, the soothing voice that you would often tune in to watch his paintings for. Because the man was talented, there's no denying that. But lots of people tuned in just for the peace.
Yeah, long day, long hard day at work or being stressed out. Bob's voice kind of mellow you out a little bit.
Yep, you just put it on and it makes you feel better.
Put on Bob Ross and a cold beer and you was mellowed out.
Now, he passed away on July 4th, 1995. What should have been, I'm not going to say like him dying was happy, but he should have had a peaceful death for a man that kind of lived his life that way. Was not peaceful at all, thanks to his business partners. They were horrible in Bob's final couple of weeks, I guess. I don't know. They said that often they would hear him on his deathbed arguing over his estate. And nobody on their deathbed should have to do that. But, I mean, can we be real for just a minute? Just real. People's true colors tend to show whenever you lose family members or people that are close to you. It's amazing to me how greedy some people get.
Anytime there's an estate involved with leaving of anything, whether it be property, money, jewelry, whatever it is, if there's something of value to be left,
Yes.
the vultures come swarming.
And it's horrible what some people will do.
Well, here is Mr. Ross. Final resting place. Oh, no, that's, he don't have a big, fat, lavish headstone like most artists and celebrities. Wind's really kicking it here, so it's kind of blowing some of the memorabilia that people have left in drawings and paintings and pencils. But he does have, back to his headstone, he does have a really nice one. I like the way they put his face on there. And then it says Bob, and then big letters Ross. Very chic. If I had to categorize it, I would say it's very 70s chic.
Yeah.
Got that. That's cool. I like that. He was a simple man.
Now, whenever Bob was actually buried, he actually only wanted a couple of people here at the ceremony, and people were invited here by invitation. So, like he was saying, very simple.
And the ones that were invited to his, service, his burial service, only 2 people with invitations didn't show up. And those...
They weren't invited.
I thought
out of his close friends, they were the only ones was not invited.
Oh, okay.
Hold on, let me read it again. It says, per request, his funeral was attended by only a few close friends and family members. All who had received an invite were there to show their love to the happy painter. Oh, maybe they were invited. It said all except 2, Ross's former business partners.
Yeah.
So maybe you were.
Yeah, so there were only 2 that didn't show up.
Yeah.
Either that or, well, the way it reads is it could be either they were invited and didn't show up, or out of everyone, those were the only two that weren't invited.
Yeah, you could read that either
It
way.
could go either way. It could go either way. So, either way, I mean, they shouldn't have been here.
They shouldn't. Nope.
Not by any means. So in 1978, there's a guy by the name of Bill Alexander that already had a show on PBS as a painter, well-known painter back then. Bob got a job with him, like teaching, you know, not on TV or anything like that, but just teaching classes, teaching people how to paint, and traveling around under, you know, this guy's name and company. So this is where Bob meets the Kowalskis. The Kowalskis are there to take a class from Bob, a painting class, because they had just lost their son. So, you know, as a way of dealing with the grief, they're like, hey, we're going to take painting class, whatever. So they get to talking to Bob and like, you know, the way he teaches and likes the style and everything so much that they tell him, hey, you should come do these classes in Washington, D.C. Like, if you do, like, we'll give you a stipend, we'll, you know, put you up, room and board, food and all this. Like, and you teach the classes in Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area that we set up for you. So that's kind of how the Kowalskis come into Bob Ross's life. So PBS eventually approaches Bob Ross to say, hey, we want to put you on TV like they've done Alexander, you know, in the past. Really liking his style. Bob's style's getting out there, right? But at the same time, a guy by the name of Dennis Kapp that owned his own business, his art supply business, you know, comes to Ross and's like, hey, let's get you some art supplies going. Like, I like your style, you're going on PBS, you know, let's get some supplies rolling. People will buy that stuff. Brushes, canvases, you know, you name it, art supplies. I'm not an art person, but you know, you get the point. So, with all that going on, Bob, his first wife, Jane, and the Kowalskis get together. They sign some legal documents and develop Bob Ross Inc. Now, all four of these people at the time of the signings are all equal partners. So you got to think 25% should be going to all four people, all right? So keep that in mind. So with Bob Ross's health failing, the Kowalskis decide to declare war on Bob Ross and his namesake, right? His legend. They want everything. Like, they want it all. They're not satisfied with what they have. Much like Bob was real quick to fix a canvas after a little mistake or finish a painting in 30 minutes that should have taken longer, he quickly went and changed his last will and testament. And he put a clause in there specifically regarding his name, his likeness, and the rest of his estate. Now, in this clause, Bob would leave his name, we have to pick it up, and likeness to his son, Steve, and one of Bob's half-brothers. At the time, Bob Ross also remarried his third wife while on his quote-unquote deathbed, or, you know, when his health was failing. And he would name her as, like, the executor of his estate, which had previously been named by Annette Kowalski. So Bob passes, and his son Steve doesn't know anything about the last will and testament, about the amendments that his father made on his deathbed. Bob's brother Jimmy is losing the battle with the Kowalskis, and he basically comes to an agreement with them that basically gives them everything, right? Gives Kowalski's control of everything, which is something Bob was trying to keep from happening. So we fast forward a few years later. Now it's been 20 years since Bob has passed away. And Steve now learns from his Uncle Jimmy about the clause and the amendment to his father's, Bob's, will and testament that Bob had made on his deathbed, where Jimmy's supposed to have, you know, the likeness and the name, this and that. So during this time, the Kowalski's daughter has taken over the business, right? And she wants to come out with a line of Bob Ross products. So Steve, now knowing about the amendment, takes her to court and is like, this was what, this went down this, you know. Well, the court's like, nope, you lose. So despite Steve losing his battle with Bob Ross Inc., some good did come from all of this, okay? So the Kowalski's daughter struck a deal with Steve and was like, hey, if you surrender your rights to your father's name and likeness, I'll let you print his name on anything you want, okay? So that's good. That's good for Steve. So basically that allowed Steve to return as an instructor, an art instructor, thanks to Bob Ross Inc. You know, and that made Bob Ross bigger than he ever was whenever he was alive. It helped class sizes get bigger. It helped more students come to learn Bob's iconic style, right? And not only that, but Steve also got to run his father's estate. So Bob didn't want the Kowalskis to have everything. The Kowalskis wanted everything. And despite the fact that the Kowalskis ended up getting everything after all, it's still, they were going to be the only ones that really kept Bob Ross's name from completely disappearing. So if you're like me, you've been a Bob Ross fan, and you would like that, you've watched him on TV, Joys of Painting, you know, growing up in the 80s, then you would like to see some of his iconic work in person. See, the Kowalskis got everything. They got all of his paintings and put it in a, you know, unsecure warehouse, basically. But fear not, because you can actually go visit these paintings because they are now in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C.
Let's have another one. Maybe he lives right there. Just make a decision and drop him in. Wherever you want him. There he goes. There he goes.
Okay, AJ has decided that she's going to put some of her little artwork on Bob's grave.
It's not a painting.
Yeah,
it is a
so
drawing.
she drew.
Some she drew.
And she drew a rabbit earlier, and she was like, I said, what is it? Because it was upside down. Because she was back there complaining about its neck being too long. But, you know, if Bob Ross had looked at it, he'd be like, it's just a happy little neck.
Just a happy little mistake.
Happy little mistake. He's got a long neck. He was born that way. It's okay.
Right.
So we're going to show you your drawing. All right, put it on there. Kind of tuck it under something since
Put it up, yeah,
it's really
underneath the
windy.
money. There you go. Nice.
All right, he now has a...
An
I don't- is
Exit
it-
to Adventure AJ drawing.
Yeah, is that a Valentine Spider-Man?
I drew it for school.
Okay.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, that does it for us here on this happy little exit. Hey, you like the way I did that, right?
We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents.
So don't forget, if you're ever in the Washington, D.C. area at the Smithsonian, you know, go check out some of Bob Ross's paintings. I'd like to give a shout out also to our VIP Road Warrior patron, the Crip Lady, who's our patron VIP at time of this filming. Thank you for your contribution. Also check out Our TikTok page is going to be, if you haven't subscribed there, make sure you subscribe because we're going to be doing some subscribers only lives when we start back doing our haunted investigations. So come and join us and let's hunt for some ghosts and see if there's really life after death, you know. So until then, catch you guys down the road at the next exit.
Keep it spooky.
Later.